Reeflay, Maelstrom, Ganeshev, Mobstudia Pios, Shkil Team, Posh Hybrid, EmilyCC. No, I am not casting some kind of curse on you. These are just a few names on a long and constantly growing list of names that have practically become synonymous with the term trash streaming. In some very obscure and dark corners of the internet, you'll find very questionable videos, live streams, pictures, and even chat rooms that, oof. And in those same corners are contents that, although not necessarily wrong, at least not according to the current societal norms, they can be without a doubt considered a bit ethically dubious. Trash streaming is one of those contents. If you're not familiar, just think reality TV but on steroids. Their live streams where humiliation, danger, or even abusive antics become the content. And under the category of trash streaming, or subcategories, if you can even believe that, and they're classified as follows: degradation, physical abuse, health risks, and mental burnout, just to name a few. If this sounds like you've found yourself on a strange Pornhub page unintentionally, then well, at least you now know a little about how I felt the entire time reading up on this case. Because imagine yourself watching someone push their body to the edge, not for a noble cause like art or medicine, not that that's okay, but not for anything that makes a difference for humanity, at least not in the way that it really matters anyways. They do it all for the thrill of every single views and donation. Now I want you to imagine watching that same person live on your screen, and no one seems to care about the fact that they are slowly dying. In fact, those same donors seem entitled to see what happens as they egg him on further. That was the last stream of Jean Pormanove, born Raphaël Graven, a French streamer whose shed light into the darkest corners of the internet culture known as trash streaming. Hello there, welcome to Crimes Digested, a place where we try to digest senseless crimes. If you are new here, welcome. And if this is not your first time seeing my face, thank you for taking time out of your busy days to join me on this channel once or twice a week, depending on my mental state. We attempt to delve into some of the most perplexing true crime stories happening around us every single day. Most of these stories are sad, some are unbelievable, and sometimes unexpectedly tragic. But most of all, these stories are a constant reminder of the dark sides of the human mind. As always, today's story doesn't disappoint, unfortunately. So I'd like to invite you to join me as we delve into this extremely bizarre case that caused a stir on the streaming platforms on a global scale. A story of the dark sides that comes with content creation and the extreme lengths creators are ready and willing to go for the monetary benefit. But very quick disclaimer, and then we'll get into today's story, I promise. Almost everything in this video is alleged, and sometimes my own personal opinion no one asked for. Most of the information though is what you can also find online, so please do form your own opinion if you have any. And if you have any additional information regarding this case, or if you notice something is wrong, misleading in any way in this video, please leave them in the comment section below so that we can all learn from each other, because it's never too late to learn. Am I right or am I right? And as always, let's try to be respectful to one another in the comment section so that we can all foster a safe space for every person to share their thoughts, opinions, and whatever else they have to say. With that said, let's get straight into it. In today's story, we'll be taking a very tiny peek into the streaming world, a place built on entertainment and connection. But just like any good thing, there's a dark side to that community as well. A dark side filled with obsession, exploitation, and in some cases, like today's case, death. And at the center of all of this is Jean Pormanove, the French streamer whose shocking broadcast ended with a heartbreaking and self-inflicted cruelty assisted by people who should have been his quote unquote friends. The saddest part is that his case isn't an isolated one because across the globe, from Russia all the way to Taiwan and even mainstream Twitch culture in the US, is the same dangerous pattern. People pushing themselves to their physical and moral limits for clicks, clout, and a quick extra cash. Did you know that there's an increased risk of sleep deprivation, sedentary strain, nutritional stress, and psychological breakdown in marathon streamers? In fact, it's almost expected. According to my favorite university, aka Google University, as well as Harvard Medical School, just to add a little credibility, I guess. Just 72 hours without sleep, which most marathon streamers do on a regular basis, put stress on the body that is akin to sleep deprivation experiments and forced labor. Neither one of which is good for anyone. A person who is sleep deprived after just 24 hours starts having cognitive impairments. They experience extreme mood swings and their reaction time is substantially slowed. After 42 hours, they'll start micro sleeping or dozing off for several seconds at a time. Hallucination starts to set in, their behavior becomes irrational, they experience lapse in their memories and judgment, and a weakened immune response. By 72 hours plus, their body starts to undergo episodes of hormonal imbalance. They'll feel disoriented. They are going to become agitated with paranoia. They are now at a higher risk of cardiovascular events like cardiac arrest and loss of consciousness. 1 week or more of this, and we're talking organ failure, permanent neurological damage, and possibly sudden death. Next is the sedentary lifestyle. Remaining seated for 12 plus hours leads to the risk of deep vein thrombosis or DVT and pulmonary embolism. The prolonged inactivity can stress the spine, leading to chronic back and neck pains. And then there is the malnutrition. Streamers often relying on energy drinks to get through the long, grueling hours, often forego drinking actually sustainable fluids like water altogether. Most opt for fast food and consuming excessive amounts of alcoholic beverage, which can lead to a spike in their blood pressure. It can lead to kidney stress, dehydration, I mean, you name it. And don't even get me started on the psychological disintegration that follows, the constant viewer pressure, like the donations tied to theirs, the quid pro quo relationship between the streamer or the creator and their following, the erosion of impulse control causing inhibition in creators, similar to being intoxicated, all of which have led to several causes of strokes, heart failures, and death during or even after streaming. Jean wasn't born into the chaos that eventually defined his online persona, though. He was born January 26 of 1979 in Voti, a small community outside of Metz in northern eastern border of France. And like many European live streamers, Jean had a humble beginning. Before he was Jean Pormanove, Raphaël Graven was the man who tried different career paths. You know, he tinkered with odd jobs here and there and later on threw himself into the digital world of live streaming. And when I say threw himself in, I mean, cannonball dive into shallow waters. Just shallow waters, okay? He went live for the very first time in March 2020, right when COVID-19 hit, and people were locked indoor, desperate for connection, entertainment, and distraction. That's when Jean came into play. He was just a really goofy gaming and reaction streamer, just cracking jokes, raging at matches from his favorite football or soccer teams, laughing at meme. His Twitch presence quickly snowballed with over 669,000 followers and 35 million total views. He also had a YouTube channel where he would rack up 202,000 subscribers, not unlike any other creator during the Panini panic. He created a TikTok account and then he eventually ventured into the world of cake. He was slowly becoming a household name, if you think about it, a very recognizable internet personality in France. But like so many streamers' origin stories, success is a double edged sword. When your community starts to grow, so do the expectations. Viewers wanted bigger stunts, crazier streams, more risk. So while some streamers lean into gameplay or comedy, Parmanov leaned into short value and quickly turned to chasing fame on platforms that rewarded endurance, novelty, and controversies. His content more often than not began revolving around long form streams filled with alcohol fueled challenges and what many critics would later describe as a performative degradation, acts meant to disgust and or unsettle the viewers, the people watching. If you've ever seen a video that made you want to close your eyes, you know, or throw up, but you can't even bring yourself to watch away long enough to do so out of morbid curiosity, then you, my friends, have seen a performative degradation. By 2020 to 2021, Jean had developed a niche audience who tuned in not to laugh with him, but to see how far he could push his body. Some streamers ran 30 to 50 hours at a stretch, fueled by stimulants, little food, and endless viewers' interaction. Many streamers no longer hit the end stream button when exhaustion slaps them in the face. And Jean was not an exception. He kept the cameras rolling, even as his health deteriorated on screen. On May 2021, during one of his longest and most infamous broadcasts, Jean Pormanove streamed for nearly 72 hours straight. Viewers watched as he went from this upbeat to manic and eventually incoherent mess. His body finally gives up on him at one point and he passes out. But his like physical collapse was mistaken by some as part of the show, as just another bit for his audience. Donations never stopped coming in, and the delirious Jean tried to continue, stumbling through incoherent speech while the chat egged him on. Again, this is not a new trend. It's only one out of many cases, an international phenomenon of marathon streamings that turns toxic. To help paint a picture of his place in this culture, I want to share a few infamous examples of trash streaming from the list of names previously mentioned. Okay, I'm gonna start with Reeflay. Sometimes late on the 2nd and early 3rd of December 2020, A Russian streamer, Stanislav, infamously known as Stas Reeflay, was heavily drinking and streaming live from his Moscow apartment in the presence of his 28-year-old girlfriend, Valentina. For whatever reason, an argument broke out. I don't speak the language, so I don't know exactly what happened, but an argument broke out between them. And viewers allegedly dare him, some going as far as to offer him money for punishment, to punish his girlfriend. And Ripley acquiesced. He forced her outside into a negative 8 degree Celsius or 18 degree Fahrenheit for us Americans. And Valentina was only clad in her underwear, standing outside in that cold for hours. At first, she could be heard banging hard on the doors to be let in. She's freezing, but the banging slowly come to a stop. At around 6 a.m. on December 3rd, he dragged her body back inside, limp and unconscious, making extremely weak attempts at giving her CPR. He gets offered more money from his viewers. Some sources say about 1,500 to keep the live going. And so that's what he does. He kept the cameras running while narrating her death in real time as chat reactions poured in. Some asking him to call for help, but he kept saying stuff like his phone was broken and he couldn't call. By the time he finally called emergency responders, she looks purple and lifeless. The initial assumption was that she passed from hypothermia, but authorities would later confirm that she actually died from a head trauma that she received earlier on during the altercation between the two. Less than a year later, in July of 2021, Reeflay was sentenced to 6 years in a Russian penal colony for negligence. Not going to lie, I felt a little outraged at the 6 years for him practically taking someone's life until I read more about the Russian prison system. It is not a walk in a park. Would it have been better to sentence him to a longer time? Yes. But does he pay for his actions even during the short sentence? More than likely. And that's all we can ask for. Valentina's was the first live stream to have reached global headline for donations, showing how lethal shock entertainment could become, has become. From 2017 to present time, Russia is faced with another case when a rotating group of Russian streamers notorious for trash streaming began making their appearance. Theirs was filled with hours of binge drinking, physical fights, and humiliation stunts. Their streams blurred the physical and invisible lines between prank culture and outright abuse, drawing police raids. During the years 2017 to 2018, their earlier streams involved 10 to 20 hours of drinking marathons, often ending with participants passed out or injured. By 2019, things began to escalate. One member gets hospitalized midstream with alcohol poisoning. Then, from 2020 to 2022, they became graphically violent, involving like beatings and forced dares. The audience would donate money to choose the next act. Platforms banned them multiple times, but like a digital cockroach that refuses to die, they refuse to be put out. They resurface with new names and channels and antics, and the cycle just continues. By mid 2023, clips circulated of members force feeding alcohols to minors. This was the catalyst that landed them in court. And finally, on the list of honorable mentions was EmilyCC. She's from Taiwan, and from 2021 to 2023, she could be considered one of the marathon endurance pioneers. Her streams weren't trash streaming in the same sense, But she was part of the 24/7 grind culture. Once, she attempted a 240 hours broadcast, citing world record attempt. But by the 180th hours, viewers were noticing that she was speaking nonsense. Her skin was pale, and moderators were begging her to stop. In April of 2021, she began streaming lasting anywhere between 50 to 60 hours on Twitch. By May of 2024, she will go 3 days straight. That's when, during one of her 72 hours streams, EmilyCC would collapse on camera and had to be carried off by friends. She later posted an ICU photo captioned, quote, "Streaming almost killed me, literally," end quote. Despite the health scares, though, she returned within days, saying that viewer support and the financial reward was what kept her going and motivated. Her 40 to 60 hour sessions have now become a signature style, one that her viewers were now accustomed to and honestly expected, which raises the ethical question of whether Twitch was incentivizing content that was literally destroying the streamer's health or not. Should they remove content of such risky nature, or would that be an infringement on the rights of their streamers? What do you think? Whether Pormanove in France, Reeflay in Russia, or EmilyCC in Taiwan, the human body becomes the stage, and it does not handle marathon streaming well at all. By early 2023, Jean was known in French streaming circles as a kind of anti-influencer. He openly mocked traditional content creators. He would trash talk the platform rules on Twitch and treated streaming less like entertainment and more like a digital fight club, a place where humiliation, sleep deprivation, and chaos became the norm. I saw a few clips from a couple years ago, and it was gut clenching to watch. Maybe it's because I'm very sensitive to pain, but I was more than shocked to see the amount of pain someone could willingly put themselves through for the entertainment of others. It was heartbreaking. Unlike the quote unquote normal YouTubers, Pormanove thrived on the mess. He was the closest definition to a drama-filled and messy creator you can find, in the cruelest way imaginable to himself too. If you thought that your fave YouTuber was messy, well, Jean will probably make them look like a child's play, okay? Viewers didn't tune in for anything informative or resourceful, not anymore, not even for the purpose of entertainment or commentary or creative gameplay. Oh no, they tune in because they never knew when he'd snap at a friend, when he'd push his body further. During the middle of February 2023, he attempted a multi-day stream where sleep, food, and basic humanity came second to the shit show. Clips from the February 2023 streams show Jean in a state of unraveling. On day one of his stream, February 18, 2023 to be exact, Jean was full of energy. He was exchanging witty banters with his audience. The vibe was his typical trash streaming energy. He mocks rival creators, slams energy drinks, all while interacting with his almost cult-like chat. Day two, his speech became slurred. He's snapping at the viewers. Paranoia was slowly creeping in, and he accuses his mods of sabotaging him. Some viewers even noted the visible tremor in his hands. By day three, on February 20, he begins hallucinating midstream. At one point, he claims someone was in the room with him. Another clip shows him like repeatedly standing up and sitting back down as if forgetting what he was trying to do. These are all textbook sleep deprivation symptoms. His chat reaction veers between concern and morbid curiosity. Some were pleading with him to end the stream. Others egg him on with donations. One of those chillingly encouraging messages reads, quote, "Go 100 hours and prove you're a legend. Sleep is for losers," end quote. This blend of support and sadism is what makes trash stream culture so volatile and dangerous. The audience isn't a safety net, especially when the streamer garners an audience that cares less about the streamer and more about their own twisted sadistic pleasure. It's a tank full of gasoline feeding the fire until someone finally burns. The steam in his engine was the same thing killing him. By February 20, around the 68 to 70 hour mark, the stream derailed. Jean was incoherently mumbling nonsensically while his body rocked with visible tremor. At one point, he tried to cook instant noodles on stream, but forgot water. Water, of all things, the only ingredient that you need to provide for your instant noodles. He nearly set his stovetop on fire in the process. The chat went absolutely wild. Some spamming laughing emojis, others typing, "Call an ambulance." Anyone with a brain watching could tell something was extremely wrong. And those who still had some semblance of conscience were watching in horror, unable to do anything to help. Unlike EmilyCC, who had friends nearby to intervene when she collapsed, Pormanove was absolutely alone. There's a turning point for all marathon streamers. For Reeflay, it was the moment he realized that Valentina wasn't breathing. For Shkil team, it was when members vomited blood mid-broadcast. For EmilyCC, it was when her body literally gave out on camera. For Jean Pormanove, it was this stream. When exhaustion crossed into medical crisis, live for thousands to see. According to his last message to his mother, Jean was beginning to really question the streams and he seems tired of it all. But his co-streamers weren't having any of it. They seem to have this power over him. The things they were allegedly saying to him behind the scenes was, to put it mildly, diabolical. In an old video clip from before Jean's death, one of his co-streamers was recorded saying, quote, "Let him say in front of the camera now that if tomorrow he dies in the middle of live, it's due to his shitty state of health and not to us. We are in the middle of a live show. You get angry, you start screaming, and you have a cardiac arrest? People will attack us when it's due to your 46 years of lousy life," end quote. I mean, what kind of friends talk to someone they care for like that? Even if they don't agree with his behavior or his way of doing things, those statements sound less like concern and more like condescension, especially when presented with the last message he sent to his mom shortly before his passing. In it, he writes, quotes, "Hi mom, how are you?" Stuck for a moment with his death game. It goes too far. I feel like I'm being sequestered with their concept. I'm sick of it. I want to get out of here. The other guy won't let me. He's keeping me locked in. Streaming platforms often claim to value creators' safety and the well-being of all users. But the truth is, algorithms don't care. In fact, the more outlandish the stream, the better. And the longer the streamer stays on, the higher their watch time, the more ads served. In this economy A person experiencing a tragedy on live streaming is not a failure. It is considered content. And content equal money. But unfortunately, every near miss will become reality if no actions are taken to prevent a repeat. So fast forward to August 2025, the 46-year-old Jean launches what is now coined as one of his biggest marathon stream yet. At first, nothing unusual, just high energy, Jean cracking jokes, pulling antics, but the timer kept running. Reports vary on the exact continuous length. Some clips and metadata show that his session had stretched past 70 hours with only tiny micro naps allowed by mods or downtime when streams briefly flickered offline. Other reports say the stream lasted between 280 and 298 hours straight. That's 10 to 12 days of almost non-stop streaming. The chat was becoming less and less a community and more like a stadium for morbid spectacle, with viewers later describing Jean's final hours as surreal. At one point, when Jean visibly nodded off, a flood of comments rolled in with aggression, not of concern, like you might have imagined if you're normal. No. The comments were full of insensitive remarks, like, quote, wake up or end the stream. One reads, he's gonna die live, LMAO, read another. And real streamers, real grind, no sleep. Some laughed. He's role playing classic Pormanove bits. Other placed bets. How long till mods kill the feeds? A small group were panicked. Call the cops, he's not breathing. Some of them chimed in. They were blatantly taunting him. Every single person in his chat was on the edge of their seats, waiting and watching to see what else can go wrong. A 46-year-old man sweating in a dim room on a hellish stage of his own making and is slowly being gamed to death by an algorithm and an audience too detached to stop or question any of it. Minutes later, he slumped forward. All that followed was a deafening silence. On the 18th of August 2025, Jean Pormanove stopped moving on stream. The chat spiraled out of control. The initial assumption that this was just another stunts slowly died down, and as minutes dragged on, his co-streamers, known as Naruto and Safin, finally checked on him. Naruto pours a bottle of water on Jean to wake him up, but there was no response. The stream didn't immediately cut off, though. It stayed live, capturing every sordid moment that followed. Again, what kinds of friends are those? Even if you're just colleagues, there's a certain level of respect and human decency that you should have towards another person. And these two, based on what I read on them so far, have none of that for Jean. Emergency services were called by 8:43 p.m. and the stream finally froze. It would take several hours before news outlets confirmed that Jean Pormanove, Raphaël Graven, was dead. Naruto posted a tribute to his socials following the revelation, stating, quote, unfortunately, JP, Raphaël Graven has left us, end quote. He typed, I love you, my brother, and will miss you terribly. Everyone was in a frenzy at this surreal announcement. French tabloids were having a field day over Jean's death by morning of August 19, 2025. The French media ran with the, quote, kick killed him narrative. Le Parisien put out an article titled, Streamer Dies Live on Kick After Days Long Broadcast. Libération wrote, quote, Digital Circus claims another performer. Another media outlet on BFM TV ran a segment with the headline quote, "The Twitch banished fine dev on Kick." I mean, Kick wasn't just on a hot bench. They were fully submerged in hot waters. Even Drake, yes, Drake, the same Drake, the one who sang Hotline Bling and started from the bottom, yeah, even he got involved. He and an American streamer named Dan Ross announced that they would cover the funeral expenses. That's how big this incident became. Within just 24 hours, his name was trending on a global scale, lumped into the growing file of trash streamers who, quote, stream themselves to death. By the time the French press had exhausted the details of Jean Pormanove's death, the conversation had moved from the man himself to the system that consumed him. Kick, eager to grow at any cost, had marketed itself as the Wild West of streaming, a place where those rejected or banned by other platforms for their risque contents were welcomed. That branding worked until it didn't. Jean's death became a PR crisis for the platform, a public reminder that when you take away guardrails in a high pressure industry, no one is safe. Platforms want engagement, sure. Audience want spectacles. Meanwhile, streamers want money that comes with validation and clout. But somehow, in that vicious triangle, the humanity gets squeezed out. People become desensitized. And with enough time and shock to the system, the human life seems less fragile and the brain more corrupt. Reddit was lit up with debates about responsibility. Some argue Jean knew the risks and pushed too hard for attention, which that's fair. And this is an unpopular opinion, but I do agree with it, right? Every day leading up to the 18th of August was a choice that Jean made. But two things can be true at once. Had he not had a place that encouraged such depravity, he never would have fallen so low. Had he not had an audience literally paying and setting the stage for him, he would have still been with us today. Then there are those who insisted that the blame lays entirely on Kick and its toxic reward structure. Most YouTube commentary creators were split between thoughtful critiques of streamers' culture and exploitative reaction videos that ironically did the same thing Kick had done, turn tragedy into views. And some might even say that that's what I'm also doing as well. And I can't argue with that. Okay, so far be it for me to judge anyone, but I'm just saying. Something that I learned while doing a case study on this video, though, was psych autopsy. And I'm gonna share it with you because I found it intriguing. Did you know? You probably do, because I feel like y'all are smart or whatever. But in forensic psychology, there's a concept called psychological autopsy, the piecing together of what led a person to their final act. Jean's story fits the profile of a man trapped in what psychologists are calling a performative dependence. To put it simply, he couldn't stop because stopping meant irrelevance. He couldn't rest because rest meant losing to competitors. And he couldn't quit because quitting meant that his whole online identity was a lie. After Jean's death, Kick announced it was reviewing policies on marathon streams. That reads like they were doing damage control more than anything. French lawmakers hinted at new legislations targeting unsafe online challenges and exploitative contents. The Minister for Digital Affairs, Marina Ferrari, declared, quote, "What we saw is absolute horror. This cannot happen again. Platforms that enable such broadcasts must face responsibilities." Twitch and even YouTube quietly revisited their own rules on endurance streaming in the shadows. Because if it could happen on Kick, that means that it could happen anywhere. And I make it sound so sinister. But honestly, I just don't know how else to put it, like without making it like a fear monger thing, you know? Now, here are the hard hitting questions. Where's the line between free will and coercion? Sure, he technically agreed to these stunts. As I mentioned before, I agree with that 1000%. But here's the thing, can someone truly consent to self harm when their financial livelihood is dependent on said harm in exchange for moolah? Money? Should platforms bear legal responsibilities? Because Kick and Twitch pocket ad revenues and traffic from extreme content, but rarely step in until the damage is already done. So, wouldn't that be considered negligence? And an even harder question is this: are the viewers complicit? After all, the chat donations, the egging on, and the audience demands all played a role in sustaining these marathons. Shouldn't we question why thousands of anonymous accounts spamming LOL in chats while a man collapsed felt that it was okay to do so? It is very easy to let Jean's death define him, right? But before the chaos, Raphaël Graven, aka Jean Pormanove, was a man who made people laugh. He was a streamer who brought color and absurd humor to thousands. His Paris Game Week of 2022 appearance showed a man proud of the community that he built. His most loyal fans followed him not just for the antics, but for his personality, the quick wit, his outbursts, and his ability to make the internet's randomness feel like an event. That is why this tragedy hit so hard home. He wasn't just a nameless trash streamer. He was someone with genuine charisma. He was just swallowed by a system that rewarded his worst risks. And his death is not just the story of one man's collapse. It's the story of what happens when platforms reward extremities or when audience cheer on the said extremes. And when creators can't step off the hamster wheel that becomes their gilded cage, this is what happened. But now he too joins the grim roll call of names like Reeflay, Shkil team, EmilyCC, Rekful, a Twitch streamer who self-exited, and countless others who pushed just a little too far. I would love to hear your thoughts on this story, so please do leave them down below. Also, don't forget to hit the little like, subscribe if you haven't already, and if there's a case you're interested in, leave it below so that we can take a look at it together. Maybe we'll see if you guys even comment. But do try to stay smart, curious, and I will see you soon. But with that, I wish you a fantastic day. Bye.